did the hashtag shut it down.
Shut it down.
A combination of Hagrid meets Yoda when it comes to the local media.
Hagrid meets Yoda. Man, really spanning the generations there with the pop culture references.
Tony, tell us about your artistic efforts right now. How's the band going?
Well, for all the artistic types listening out there, we're currently in need of a drummer. So if there's any drummers out there that are willing to leave the house that do not have a Norman Bates-esque relationship with their mother.
Oh, and I'll add this too, because one of my pet peeves about finding drummers when I was playing in bands on a regular basis was, well, yeah, you're a drummer. Do you own a drum set?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's.
Well, then you're not a drummer. I'm sorry. You're not even a drum owner.
You're a guy that bangs on things.
Tony, you're up. Are you still up for an award from for the Cretin?
I am. Yeah, I'm up for best male vocalist for some godforsaken reason. But of course, a shout out to the boys. Tony Jones and the Cretin 3 is up for best punk band in the Motif Music Awards. And then, if you pick up the newest Motif, it's the cannabis issue, and you'll see my article in there dealing with industrial hemp. So we always. When it comes to alternative media, they've kind of been doing it a while. We send a big shout-out to Motif Magazine. Upstairs from us right here was the Providence Phoenix, and at one point in this market you had the Phoenix and you had Motif, and the Phoenix was Goliath and Motif was David, and now Motif is still hanging in there, and they're doing well.
I wouldn't say Motif is Goliath. They're just remaining.
They're the last guy standing.
Well, the media landscape continues to change and evolve here in Little Rhodey. The age-old stalwarts, the Urinal, WJAR, are starting to fall on hard times and becoming less relevant in the marketplace. You know, a few exceptions. You know, we've got a couple of favorite investigative reporters on all of them. WPRI, for all its efforts and all its success in investigative journalism, continues to be something of a ratings failure. Folks, I believe, are moving to the Internet, obviously not just for primary news, but for content and supporting information, underlying facts, original research, all of which can be had much more readily and without some of the, shall we say, bias exhibited by local media, or just some of the shallowness exhibited by local media.
Wait, bias? You mean they don't like colored people, or like is that the bias you're talking about?
They don't like independent media people either, Sparky. All right. You know, rising and first of all,
so it's the true meaning of prejudice. They don't like anybody that's not them.
Right.
Yeah. Then you've got ascendant several organizations. We'd like to think the coalitionradio.us is newly ascendant, particularly given the activities of the past few weeks. A special shout-out has to go to someone we consider the goddess of local indie media, and, of course, that is Kate Nagel.
Kate Nagel.
Kate Nagel. Wicked smart, wicked good writer, not afraid of confrontation, not afraid of getting in people's grill. You know, incredibly deft turnaround on emerging and evolving events. I think that's what we enjoyed the most. We saw Kate Nagel this week at her best.
But finding angles that nobody else is touching on these stories, they have been all over this Paw Sox Stadium from the actual deal itself to who the power players are and who they contribute to politically. I mean, these are important questions to ask. You know, how much money did Skefco give to Gina Raimondo, to Nicholas Mattiello, to, like, let's be honest, folks, they're out there making these contributions because they're buying political favors. And that's what they're doing.
And that's the beauty of alternative media. I mean, the setup we have here today, we could be in an event, I could have this set up in 15 minutes, and we could be broadcasting to hundreds of thousands of people at a moment's notice. And we're seeing that with Go Local. The content is fresh, and it's up in minutes. It's not read about it in a few days, hear about it a few days later when everybody's sick of it. I mean, the freshness of the content for people looking to stay informed is there now.
Well, good friend Russ Moore, who's also a frequent contributor to the coalition, also writes, and of course we for Go Local, and writes what I consider one of the seminal columns in Rhode Island, the weekly Who's Hot and Who's Not. Ms. Raimondi seems to spend an inordinate amount of time on the Who's Not list post Blizzard. But
should she just be the default knot position. Like the first knot is just Gina Raimondo, because really there's not a week that goes by that you can't find something that she's not hot for.
Right. And and then you've also got the other standing headline, the other punchline in a political punditry. That, of course, would be Nikki Polly Walnuts Mattiello,
who's been so quiet lately.
Which scares the living shit out of me.
Pat and I have talked about this before. One of the beauty parts of doing what we do and being an independent media outlet and owning the content that we create is, we don't have to worry about our access because we don't have any access.
Right.
We can say what we want, when we want to say it, and how we want to say it. And if it offends, and you know what? That's really, most of them can't take a joke. They can't,
or they're too stupid to understand that they are the joke.
Right. Like they can't understand that they're not that they're not caricatures of themselves. The hard right, the hard left. The one thing they have in common is they have the inability to smell their own bullshit.
And that's why I was surprised earlier this week, Pat, that you wasted your time calling out Mark Patinkin, because when I think of somebody who is no longer relevant, I think of the Providence Journal and Mark Patinkin wearing mom jeans.
But sometimes you're tired and you just need an easy target.
He is what you call a target-rich environment. The trouble is he's become. I had a conversation with Mark Patinkin a few years ago before we started the coalition.
He becomes the last man standing at Projo, in my opinion.
Yeah, he ultimately has become a parody of himself. Here's a guy who's an immensely talented writer who, when he first started with the Urinal, actually wrote big stories on big things. He attacked big ideas. Unfortunately now, it's either observational humor, in other words, he's the East Side liberal version of a wannabe Jerry Seinfeld, or increasingly personal and simultaneously awkward reflections on his own family life, followed by the occasional shill piece for whoever seems to be in charge or might not threaten his probably inordinately high-paid package at said Providence Journal, while the rest of the guild gets crucified at the slaughterhouse called... What's the latest? I don't even remember. Who owns them now?
Gatehouse
Media. Slaughterhouse Media. I hereby dictate that on the coalition they will now be referred to the Providence
Slaughterhouse Media.
Providence Urinal. And by the way, as we sing,
subsidiary of Slaughterhouse Media.
Slaughterhouse Media. And by the way, we must, as in spirit of full disclosure and good journalistic integrity, give a shout out to Philippe and Jorge, who are the inspiration for us in so many ways.
They really are. I gotta
you guys
say,
plagiarized too.
I give full credit, man. I mean, it was. By the way, for the record.
Well, no, we steal ideas, not words.
Right. It was Kate Nagel who came up with Skefonomics, and it was Kate Nagel who came up with the unused yet soon to be important Twin Riverton. Okay,
I love that Twin Riverton.
Yes,
that's awesome.
Kate Nagel came up with that.
I'll say this about Philippe and Jorge. If y'all out there don't know, Philippe and Jorge are two guys by the name of Bruce McRae and Chip Young. They're both great guys. Bruce McRae, also known as Rudy Cheeks, if you remember that from back in the day. Chip is a fellow down at the Metcalf Institute at URI. He's really involved in environmental issues, and I can't say enough good things about Chip. He was instrumental with what we did at EcoRI News in the first couple of years that we were up and running. I don't know if we could have done it without his support. So I just want to give a shout out to both those guys who have a knack for saying the right thing at the wrong time, and I think that's a beautiful thing, and we aspire to that. Poking the bear that needs to be poked.
And that comes back, I think, to content is king, because like the coalition, like their column, they were always able to find a home. So it wasn't but a week that they missed when the Providence Phoenix went out of business that they were back in Motif and on HJJ. I mean, the column literally skipped 1 week.
They're good at what they do, so they're in demand.
Yeah.
It's really that simple. We're aspiring to do that at the coalition. Again, we don't have to worry about sacrificing access because we don't have any. So that frees us up. That gives us a very, very wide berth at the coalition to say what we want, to write what we want, to promote issues and ideas from other groups and other people that you're not going to see on Rhode Island Public Radio, on the Pro Joe, on HJJ, on WPR. You're just not going to see these issues and opinions there.
And that's why people stay awake during our broadcasts.
Right. Because they go, what are they going to say next? Are they going to say something ridiculously outrageous next? And I think even on broadcast radio, you know, aside from, and we've been really good tonight about the F-bombs and the GDs, and we haven't really gotten into that. But, you know, we say things that nobody else is willing to say. To speak truth to power. And whether or not power is listening, we don't care, because we're just going to keep saying it.
Well, and I know I've mentioned this before, and I'm sure you had to come through the same decision, was that when I decided to run for office, the girlfriend and I really had to sit down, because when you run for office and you file your paperwork, your home address becomes public record. So I really had to sit down and think, of all the people that I've offended over the years, do I want them all knowing where I live? And luckily, no tires were slashed in my particular race.
You know, honestly, I didn't really have that discussion because I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. And, you know, I've always been of the assumption that, you know, as somebody in the public eye, I'm just going to tell the truth.
Is that how you...
You know, if somebody says... You know, have you ever smoked marijuana? I'm going to say yes, and I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Is that how you talked the PO taxpayer into becoming Pat Ford?
No, I think that Pat is mildly schizophrenic, and that
Mildly?
use the mic, Pat.
Mildly?
We're on the radio.
Shit, we're live on the radio?
I think he.
I
think
my
Pat.
crammed
And one of the most endearing things about my friend Pat Ford is that he moves seamlessly between the egos of Pat Ford and the PO taxpayer.
But he used to take great pleasure in the fact that everybody wanted to know who the PO taxpayer was, and you love shoving it up their butt.
Well, it's only because the
didn't
Facebook
know.
police. If it wasn't for the Facebook police, I enjoyed the fact that people got really annoyed and frustrated by it.
Yeah.
And they did.
I mean, it was a thing.
And if they never fundamentally understood was, as in many cases in dealing with political opposition, their sheer outrage, their sheer agony is what motivates me. I want to see them suffer.
Fuel, yes,
It was fuel to the
absolutely.
fire. All right. What is it? We want to. What's one of our mottos? We want to rip people from the suburbs of their minds.
That's right.
All right.
We want to be the burr under people's saddles.
Right.
We want to be that branch in the woods when you're running through the woods that almost hits you in the eye and takes your eye out.
Yeah.
That, you know, it's not painful, but it's really goddamn annoying.
Right. I mean, it's so I took great pleasure because people would wax on for paragraphs and scream at you and yell at me as if somehow they were going to insult me. I think we all know that I'm relatively uninsultable. You know, it's all good.
One of your most endearing qualities, actually.
You know, I mean,
There's not many
You're the
feelings
only guy
at
I
this
know
table.
that steals my fat jokes.
dude, it is what it is. So I mean, when any of these clowns, I mean, one person said to me once on at a political event, "You're just a car salesman," and I said back to them, "What do you do?" And they said back to me, "Well, I work in tech." And I said, "Oh, I used to work in tech. Don't you want to go back?" I'd love to, but I can't afford the cut and pay. Shut them the fuck up.
Earlier this year, and I'll say this was probably my New Year's resolution this year, was I am no longer going to suffer fools gladly.
Yeah, why?
And I am and on top of that, I am going to offend those that I find offensive.
Right. I mean, there's this notion from some people that we hold very near and dear that aren't you worried about what they'll think? They hate us anyway. They loathe us.
Right. Again, why do we have to worry about our access when we have none?
Right. I mean, And when you can't get a quote, make it the fuck up.
Right. If you don't like what's being said in the news, then make your own goddamn news.
Exactly. I mean, if you're going to sit idly